my standing weight was over 200 pounds, but only for about 20, 30 seconds or so. Okay, so this is on the way up. This is taken by a chase plane. And so everybody in there, assuming this isn't the very top of the parabola, is basically 1.8 times the normal weight. And this doesn't look, this is kind of like a cool shot. The one that's kind of disturbing is this. When you watch the planes come into LAX, you pretty much never see them do this. So we're actually flying out over the Gulf of Mexico. This is flying out of Houston, out of a place called Ellington Field. And you're out over the coast of the Gulf of Mexico. And what they do is the air traffic controllers clear a rectangle. It's a corridor, essentially, where no other aircraft are. And so between 35,000 feet and 22,000 feet, and for some distance to the left and right, and off in that direction, wherever it might be, there's nobody else. So you can go ahead and fly along. What you do is we flew 15 parabolas in one direction, turned the aircraft around, flew 15 back, and then did a lunar parabola, 1/6 gravity, and a Martian parabola, which is about 1/3 gravity. It was kind of neat. Okay, so this is what the inside of the aircraft looks like. Back here, almost all the seats have been taken out. So this is a row of seats, and then there's a series of seats, because you sit in the seat like a regular passenger when you climb out. And the experiments are mounted here. This is a utility box, but there's half a dozen experiments mounted on the floor. And then there's a counter that tells you how many parabolas, what parabola you're on, and what the G-load at the time is. And then there's a cockpit up here, of course, and they keep the door closed, so nothing from in here goes floating into the flight deck. And the crew's all strapped in there, but it looks like we're not. So this is what it looks like on the ground, and this is what it looks like during a parabola. So here's a friend of mine, Carlo Caetano here, who's actually on the ceiling, and other guys floating around, videographers and so on too. But here's an experiment. This is actually a combustion experiment looking at flame. Now, one of the things you have to be really careful of is if you have liquids or flame, you do not want them loose on an aircraft. So everything has to be very carefully contained and everything else. But a candle flame on Earth is a typical shape that you see with the blue and yellow part, and it kind of starts wide and then tapers out at the top. It doesn't do that in weightlessness. What it does is it forms a blue ball around the wick. So the shape of the flame is very much dependent on gravity and convection. Basically, hot air is rising, and that's what gives the flame its shape. And it also is somewhat inefficient, which is where you get the yellow part. That's not what happens in weightlessness. You get a much cleaner burning flame, and it forms a ball around the wick. And it can actually put itself out, because if it's in a ball like that, then it can't get oxygen. So, completely different process. So this is one of the colleagues of mine. This is a researcher from the Dryden Flight Research Center up Andrews Air Force Base doing the combustion experiment. And if you are not attached to your experiment in some way, you're going to be up here. So Carlo was actually working on a glove box down here. This is one of the later parabolas. It's 20-something or other. So we did all our experiments first, and then we goofed around for the rest of the flight. But in order to do your experiment, you've got to be strapped in or holding on. So you can see he's got his leg hooked up here. And when you set the experiments down, you think about that. You think about where you're going to be supported, where you're going to have straps, and so on. Okay, now there's another aspect of it I mentioned. It's known as the vomit comet. Here's one of the briefings. And what do you suppose he's holding there in his hand? Yes, it's a bag. What kind of bag, boys and girls?
Barf bag.
Yes, barf bag. There's no window dressing on this one. So one of the things you do is you stuff your pockets where you can get to it in a hurry if you need it, because you'll need it in a hurry if you need it. Now, if you just go up on an aircraft like this, and there's a company called Zero G, and you can fly like 15 parabolas or 10 parabolas, and they charge you whatever they charge you for it. They don't give you drugs. You got to take your own, like scopolamine or there's a bunch of seasickness kinds of drugs you can take. But the flight surgeons here actually gave us scopolamine and dexedrine. Now, scopolamine, some of you might be familiar with that. There's a patch, a transdermal patch. And when we go out in the water, my wife takes that too. And what it does is it deadens the part of your inner ear that's actually involved in motion and sensor. You waving a look at me? How much more time?
Running out of time.
Okay, how much more time do we have?
5 minutes.
Okay. By taking if you don't take any medication at all, you've got a 70% chance of getting sick. 70%. If you do, it's about 10%. So I took my scopolamine, had no problem except dry mouth, had a great flight. Only 1 in 10 people actually get sick. See, I'm working. My buddy there is hanging from the ceiling. And over here is Miss 10%. So this is a flight surgeon. She's strapped down there with her array of barf bags. So she did not have a good flight, but everybody else did. Okay, that's basically it. This is a shot from the International Space Station. I actually found this yesterday. I just thought I'd show you this. This is Dubai. Okay, you might recognize this right here. This is the Palm Island. The company that has this, the one called The World, which I think is over here someplace, is actually bankrupt, but that's a different story. But you can see it actually from outer space. And I'll show you that because on my trip, when I flew out, I also had a chance to fly the space shuttle simulator and I actually landed it successfully. So